I grew up in a rugged part of West Virginia, in a small, isolated town called Blackwood. Out there, the forest doesn't just surround you, it swallows you. Hunting wasn't just a hobby, it was how we survived the winters. My father taught me the tracks of the woods when I was barely 10, and by the time Elias, that's me, turned 25, I considered those woods my second home. This particular incident happened in late November 2022. A bitter cold had settled over the valley, leaving a crisp, thin layer of frost on the ground. It was perfect for tracking, as every footstep crunching on the frozen leaves echoed like a gunshot. I had spent weeks scouting a 100-acre plot of private timberland owned by a family friend. It was deep, untamed territory, with a rusted-out logging bridge and an old, collapsing ranger station that had been abandoned since the 70s. I'd hunted there half a dozen times and never saw a single soul. I arrived at 4:45 a.m., the air so cold it stung my lungs. I parked my old Jeep by a collapsed stone wall and hiked in using a dim red lens on my headlamp. The silence was heavy, suffocating. Even before I reached my spot, I had that prickling sensation on the back of my neck, that predator-prey instinct telling me I wasn't the only one moving in the dark. I climbed into my climber stand, perched about 25 feet up a massive oak, and waited for the gray light of dawn. As the sun began to bleed through the tree line, I spotted something that made my stomach drop. About 70 yards out, a makeshift wooden platform was bolted to a pine tree. I had been in this exact clearing just 3 days prior. That platform had not been there. It looked ancient, built from rotting, mismatched boards, but it was positioned perfectly to look directly at me. Worse yet, there were no scattered tracks around it, just one straight line of heavy boot prints leading from the darkest part of the thicket directly to the base of that tree. At 9:15 a.m., I saw a flicker of movement. I gripped my bow, thinking a buck was finally moving through. Instead, a man stepped out from behind a cedar. He wasn't wearing orange or camo. He was wearing a heavy, tattered trench coat and a dark beanie pulled low. He didn't move. He just stood there staring directly up at me. Then, with agonizing slowness, he lifted a hand and gave a stiff, robotic wave. It wasn't a hello. It was a, "I see you." I gave a short, nervous nod back, trying to play it cool. He stepped back behind the cedar. I watched that tree for 40 minutes. He never came out the other side. There was no sound of footsteps, no snapping twigs. He just vanished into thin air. By midday, the silence was too much. I climbed down, my heart hammering against my ribs. I walked over to where he had been standing. The frost on the ground was untouched. No boot prints, no scuff marks, nothing except the original trail leading to the platform. I looked up at the wooden stand. It was empty. I started back to my Jeep, but the woods had changed. Every few yards, I found thick, black electrical tape tied to low branches. Then I saw them. Propped up on sharpened sticks were Polaroid photos. They were blurry, but as I got closer, I realized they were shots of me, walking into the woods that morning, climbing my stand, even one of me eating a sandwich at noon. I broke into a jog. When I got within sight of my Jeep, I froze. Sitting on a stump right next to my vehicle was my own gear bag. I had left it hanging on a hook 25 feet up in my tree stand. It was wide open. My skinning knife, my rangefinder, and my cell phone were laid out on the stump in a perfect vertical line, precisely spaced out. He had climbed my tree while I was walking to the cedar. He had been mere feet away from me in the silence. I lunged into my Jeep. The driver's side door was standing wide open. I hit the ignition, and as I threw it into reverse, my headlights swept across the edge of the woods. There he was, standing by the stone wall. The man in the trench coat was wide-eyed, a jagged, toothy grin plastered across his face. He wasn't holding a weapon. He was holding my spare set of truck keys that I kept hidden in a magnetic box under the wheel well. He didn't run. Instead, he slowly pressed the keys into the palm of his hand and began to clench his fist until his knuckles turned white and blood started to drip from between his fingers. He just stared at me with that insane grin as I floored the gas. I didn't stop driving until I hit the state highway. I called the owner, and a week later, the authorities found a shelter near abandoned ranger station. Inside the shelter, there was hundreds of stolen keys and photos of local hunters. I still hunt, but never in West Virginia, and I never, ever go into the woods without someone watching my back. Because out there, the most dangerous thing isn't the bears or the wolves, it's the things that smile at you from the shadows.